You are standing over the ball, feet set, knuckles white, that same slice already living in your head before you even move the club. And no matter how many times you shift your weight, tuck your elbow, or rotate your hips like the video told you, the ball still leaks right into the trees. Here is what I learned after years of that misery. The golf swing was never meant to be built out of 20 moving parts. It was meant to be one single motion, controlled almost entirely by your hands, and the man who proved it swung a club with only one leg. That truth was common knowledge 100 years ago, and then it got quietly buried under an industry that makes far more money selling you complication than selling you simplicity. I am going to show you the exact method a New York teaching professional wrote down in 1937, a method so simple you can practice it tonight in your living room with a handkerchief and a pocket knife. No lessons, no launch monitor, no new driver, just the thing your grandfather's generation understood and ours forgot. I remember standing on the 9th tee at a scruffy little municipal course outside town, watching an old man in his 70s outdrive me with a swing that looked like it took no effort at all, and thinking, what does he know that I don't? It turned out he knew the one thing nobody had bothered to teach me. Let me take you back to where my frustration started, because I think it is your story too. I did everything the modern way. I want you to understand that first, because I was not lazy about this. When my score stalled in the low 90s, I did exactly what we are all trained to do. I opened my wallet, I bought a driver advertised to be 15 yards longer, and it cost me almost $500. I bought a training aid that strapped my arm to my chest. I paid for a series of lessons where a young pro pointed a camera at me and drew red lines all over my body on a tablet screen, telling me my hip rotation was 3 degrees off and my club was crossing the line at the top. And you know what happened? I got worse. I got worse because I was now thinking about 8 different things on the way down, and you cannot think about 8 things in the 1.5 seconds a golf swing actually takes. The more I learned, the stiffer I got. The stiffer I got, the more the ball sprayed. I started to dread the course. I started to believe what a lot of us secretly believe, that some people just are not built for this game, and I was one of them. But that old man on the 9th tee stuck in my head because his swing had none of the things the tablet told me I needed. It was loose, it was smooth, it looked like he was doing almost nothing, and the ball just leapt off his club. So I started asking a different question. Instead of asking, how do I add more to my swing, I started asking, what did people know before all this technology existed? What did golfers do? Back when there were no cameras, no launch monitors, no $500 drivers, and no lessons drawn in red lines. That question sent me down a path I did not expect. And at the end of it was a name almost nobody says anymore. A man who, by every logic of modern instruction, should not have been able to play golf at all. His name was Ernest Jones. And to understand why he matters, you have to understand what happened to him in the winter of 1916. Ernest Jones was a young English golf professional, a good one, playing out of a club in Essex before the First World War. Then the war came, and like a whole generation of young men, he went to the front. In 1916, during the fighting, a grenade took his right leg. It was amputated below the knee. He was 29 years old, and the doctors and everyone around him assumed his golf, his living, his whole identity as a player was finished. A man cannot swing a golf club on one leg. Everyone knew that. It is obvious. Golf is a game of the legs and the hips and the ground, of coiling and driving and transferring your weight from one foot to the other. Except nobody told Ernest Jones to stop. While he was still recovering, before he was even fitted for a proper artificial limb, he had them prop him up, and he took some swings, balanced on his one good leg, sometimes sitting in a chair. And here is the part that stopped me cold when I first read it, the number that made me sit up in my chair and read it again. Playing on one leg at Clacton-on-Sea, Ernest Jones went around the course and shot an 83. Not long after, still learning to compensate, he broke it further and returned a 72. Sit with that for a second. A 72. That is par golf. That is a score most amateurs with two good legs, a coach, and a garage full of equipment will never shoot in their entire lives. And a man did it standing on one leg because his other leg was gone. Now think about what that actually proves. Every modern lesson I ever paid for was built on the idea that the swing comes from the ground up, from the lower body, from weight transfer and hip drive and leg power. If that were the real engine of the golf swing, Ernest Jones's 72 would be impossible. Flatly impossible. But it happened, which means the real power of a golf swing, the thing that actually sends the ball out there, was coming from somewhere else entirely. Jones spent the rest of his life figuring out exactly where. He moved to the United States in the early 1920s and became a teaching professional in New York, eventually giving lessons at a studio on Fifth Avenue and out at Long Island. And over those decades, he taught tens of thousands of golfers, and he distilled the entire game down to one phrase that he repeated until the day he died. Swing the club head. That was it. That was the whole secret. And I have to be honest with you, when I first read those three words, I was disappointed. It sounded too simple. It sounded like a fortune cookie. I almost put the book down, but then I kept reading, and I realized I had completely misunderstood what he meant, the same way almost everyone misunderstands it, which is exactly why it works when almost nothing else does. Here is what he meant, and this is the idea that finally rebuilt my golf swing. Pick up a length of rope or a chain. Now try to make the end of that rope hit something with force. You cannot push it. If you shove your hand forward, the rope just crumples and folds. There is only one way to make the end of a rope move fast, and that is to swing it. You make one smooth motion, and the weight at the end gathers speed on its own and whips through. The rope does not need you to muscle it, it needs you to swing it and then get out of its way. A golf club, Ernest Jones taught, is exactly the same. The club head is the weight on the end of the rope. Your job, your only real job, is to swing that weight and to feel it the whole way. When you swing it correctly, the club does something remarkable on its own. Centrifugal force, the outward pull of a weight traveling in an arc, causes the club head to reach maximum speed exactly where you want it, at the bottom, at the ball. You do not create that speed with your muscles. You release it by swinging. And this is why a man on one leg could shoot par, because he was not trying to power the ball with his body. He was swinging the weight of the club head with his hands and letting physics do the rest. His body did not lead the swing. His body simply responded to it, staying balanced, staying out of the way. He could not rely on brute leg drive. So he was forced to discover the thing that was true all along and that the rest of us, with our two working legs, never had to learn because we could get away with muscling it. But here is the question that started to burn in me once I understood this. If it is this simple, if a one-legged man proved it a century ago and taught it on Fifth Avenue for 40 years, why in the world has almost nobody ever told me this? Why did I pay for lessons that taught me the exact opposite? That is where the story stops being about golf and starts being about money. Let me explain what actually happened to Ernest Jones's idea, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When Jones was teaching in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, the golf world was much smaller and much poorer. There were no swing cameras, there were no thick instruction manuals full of body positions, there were certainly no $500 drivers. A golfer had a few clubs, a professional who had actually played, and a bag of common sense. Instruction was about feel, it was about the motion, it was verbal, it was physical, and it was cheap. Ernest Jones's own book, when it finally came out, could be read in an afternoon because there was almost nothing to it. Swing the club head, feel the weight, everything else follows. Now think about what that model does for an industry. Nothing. You cannot sell much to a man who already understands his swing. He does not need a new club every year. He does not need a package of lessons. He does not need training aids. A feel, once you own it, is free forever. and you can teach it to your kids for nothing. So watch what happened as the money poured into golf. As the game got richer, instruction did not get simpler. It got more complicated, and it got more complicated on purpose because complication is what you can sell. When high-speed cameras arrived, suddenly the swing could be frozen and dissected into dozens of positions. When the tablet and the launch monitor arrived, suddenly your swing could be reduced to numbers, and numbers can always be improved, which means you can always be sold the next lesson to fix the next number. Think about the incentive here and be honest about it. A teaching model based on one simple feel makes you independent. A teaching model based on 20 measurable positions makes you a customer for life. Which one do you think a billion-dollar industry chose to promote? They did not sit in a room and conspire to bury Ernest Jones. It was quieter than that, and in a way worse. They simply let the simple truth fade, because there was no profit in repeating it, and they amplified the complicated version, because every layer of complication was another thing to sell you. If you want to go deeper into this history before I take you through the rest of the story, I have put everything I found into a series of digital books. The first one is called First Swing, and it covers exactly this moment. The discovery that the modern instruction machine was built on a foundation that an earlier generation had already disproved. There is also deeper fixes for the players who have been at this for years and know something fundamental is still wrong, and a complete edition called Full System that ties every thread together. You can find whichever fits you best in the description below. Now, back to the man himself, because once you understand what he went through, the simplicity of what he taught starts to make a very different kind of sense. And the cruelest part, the part that actually made me angry when it clicked, is what the complication does to your body when you stand over the ball. Ernest Jones had a word for it: paralysis by analysis. He watched it happen to golfer after golfer, decade after decade. When your mind is loaded with 8 positions to hit on the way down, your hands cannot swing freely. The thinking freezes the feel. The very instruction you paid for is the thing destroying the natural motion you were born able to make. I lived that. I paid to be made worse, and so have millions of people. And almost none of us ever knew there was another way that used to be common knowledge. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. You are thinking, this sounds nice, but I am not an athlete. I am not young. I have never been any good, and a story about a professional shooting par does not help someone like me. Maybe you have not swung a club in years. Maybe you have never played at all, and you just clicked because you are tired of being sold complicated answers to simple problems. This next part is for you especially, and I want you to actually try it because it costs you nothing, and it will show you in about 60 seconds that everything I have said is real. You do not even need a golf club. Here is the drill Ernest Jones used with beginners, movie stars, and tour players alike, right there in his New York studio. Take a handkerchief, a small hand towel, or even a sock. Tie something with a little weight to one end, a pocket knife, a set of keys, a spoon, anything small and heavy. Now hold the light end between your thumb and first 2 fingers and let the weighted end hang down. That weight on the end, that is your club head. The cloth is the shaft. Now, just swing it. Let it swing back and forth like a pendulum, side to side in front of you. Do not force it. Do not jerk it. If you snatch at it, the cloth collapses, exactly like the rope, and the weight goes nowhere. But if you make one smooth, unhurried motion, you will feel the weighted end pull the cloth tight and gather speed all on its own at the bottom of the arc. Feel that pull in your fingertips, that steady outward tug. That is centrifugal force. That is the exact sensation the club head should give you in a real swing, and I promise you have almost never felt it with an actual club because you were too busy muscling it. Do it for 2 minutes. Swing back, swing through, and keep your eyes on how the weight leads and how your hand just guides and follows. Notice something important. To keep that weight swinging smoothly, your body naturally stays balanced and quiet. You are not heaving your shoulders around. Your hand and the weight are doing the work, and your body is simply supporting it. That is the entire golf swing in miniature, and you just did it perfectly on your first try with a sock sitting in your living room at zero cost. Huh. That feeling in your fingertips is the thing the industry cannot sell you and does not want you chasing, because once you have it, you stop needing them. And here is the beautiful part. When you pick up a real club after this, your only job is to reproduce that same feeling. Swing the weight of the club head, feel it pull, let it gather speed at the bottom. Guide it, do not force it. The grip is soft in the fingers because a tight, tense grip in the palms strangles the exact feel you are trying to keep alive. But there is one more layer to this, the deepest part of what Ernest Jones taught. And it is the piece that finally took me from understanding the idea to actually playing better golf. Because feeling the weight swing back and forth is one thing, doing it while a real club is going up over your shoulder and back down in a circle is another. And this is where he left behind the single most valuable instruction I have ever found in the pages of a book most golfers today have never even heard of. The book is called Swinging into Golf, first published in 1937, and later he expanded the ideas in a book simply titled Swing the Club Head. And buried in those pages is the drill that ties everything together, the one that took the pendulum in your fingers and turned it into a full golf swing. He used 2 points. He told his students that the entire swing should feel like the club head is swinging between 2 points, and that you keep your mind only on the club head, never on your arms, your shoulders, or your hips. Here is how you feel it, and this is the finale, the thing I wish somebody had handed me a decade and hundreds of wasted dollars ago. Go back to your handkerchief and wait. But this time, instead of swinging it flat in front of you like a clock pendulum, swing it up and around on a tilted circle, the way a real golf club actually travels. Swing the weight up to about where your back shoulder is. Feel it change direction on its own at the top when the cloth goes momentarily loose, and then swing it down and up to a matching point on the other side, finishing high. Back shoulder to front shoulder in one unbroken motion, and the whole time your attention lives in that little weight on the end of the string. You are not thinking about the top of the backswing as a position to hit. You are thinking of it as nothing more than the place where the weight naturally runs out of momentum and turns around all by itself because you swung it there. When you keep your mind fixed on the club head, and only the club head, something almost magical happens. And Ernest Jones documented it with thousands of students. Your body organizes itself, your wrists hinge and unhinge at the right time. Not because you consciously set them, but because that is what has to happen for a weight on a string to swing freely. Your weight shifts gently, not because you forced a hip drive, but because staying balanced around a swinging weight requires it. Every one of those 20 positions the tablet tried to sell me, the good ones, the ones that actually matter, appear on their own as a consequence of one correct idea. Swing the club head, feel its weight. Keep your mind on it and nothing else. That is why a man with one leg could shoot par. He had no choice but to trust the swinging weight because he had no big lower body engine to fall back on. He was, in a strange way, the purest test case in the history of the game, living proof that the club head does the work when you let it. And he spent 40 years on Fifth Avenue trying to give that freedom to everyone who walked through his door, right up until his death in 1965. Take that swinging feeling to the course this week. Grip the club lightly in your fingers, not crushed in your palms. Before every shot, make one slow practice swing where your only thought is feeling the weight of the club head swing from one shoulder around to the other. Then step up and do the same thing at the ball, and let the ball simply get in the way of a swing that was going to happen anyway. Do not hit at the ball, swing through it. The ball is not the target of a violent strike. It is just a small object standing in the path of a club head that you are smoothly swinging to a full, balanced finish. The first time I truly did this, the first time I quieted every voice in my head and thought only about the weight on the end of the shaft, I hit a 5-iron so pure and so effortless that I actually laughed out loud on an empty fairway. It felt like I had done nothing, and it went farther and straighter than the shots I used to try to crush with everything I had. That is the moment the whole thing became real for me, and it is the moment I want for you. Here is what I keep coming back to. A man lost his leg in a war a century ago, and in doing so, he stumbled onto the simplest and truest description of the golf swing anyone has ever written. He gave it away for the price of a thin little book. And an entire industry, without ever having to ban a word of it, let that truth sink quietly out of sight, because there is no money in a golfer who already understands. What was taken from you was not a technique, it was your independence, your right to own your own swing and never have to buy it back again, one lesson and one new driver at a time. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the simple old answers were buried on purpose, that somebody profits every time you are told your problem is more complicated than it really is, then you already understand what this channel is about. Ernest Jones handed us the map. Most people just never got to see it. So here's what I want you to do. Go find a handkerchief and something with a little weight, tie them together tonight, and swing it. Then come back and tell me in the comments the exact moment you first felt that club head pull against your fingertips, that outward tug at the bottom of the arc, because that feeling is the whole secret, and I want to know if you felt it as clearly as I did. Tell me if you have ever even heard the name Ernest Jones before today, because I had not, and I have played this game for years. And if you believe, like I do, that the most useful knowledge in the world has a way of getting quietly buried whenever someone can profit from your confusion, then come with us. This channel exists to dig those methods back up and hand them to you, free, the way they were always meant to be passed down. Subscribe and stand with the people who are recovering what was taken from them. Because next I'm going after another forgotten piece of this same game, a putting method from an era before anyone owned a single training gadget, a way old-timers used to sink putts in the dark, using nothing but their own 2 ears. And once you see how it works, you will never look at the green the same way again. Now, this video showed you why the one-motion swing works. But inside the Old Ways Almanac, I pick up right where we left off and walk you through the full Ernest Jones hands-only method, drill by drill. And if something isn't clicking, you can ask me directly. A real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime with one click.